Join us as we dive into the history, hauntings, and high strangeness of the world to try to better understand the paranormal. I will be your guide. I am paranormal researcher and investigator Eric Freeman Sims. Welcome to the Unseen Paranormal Podcast. Hey everybody, today we have a little different show for you. We are chatting with paranormal investigator and founder of Packman Paranormal, Ernie Pack. We're going to discuss the ongoing battle to save Waverly Hills. Ernie's going to fill us in on what is going on in the legal battle and how this all started and what we can do to help. Hey, Ernie, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us today.
Hey, thank you. It's good to be here.
Yeah, so we met in person the other night at an event up in Franklin, Kentucky, and Save Waverly Hills event. And I've been kind of watching behind the scenes, but to actually, meet Tina and Charlie at the event and meet y'all and hear the impact, kind of sitting straight in front of y'all. I wanted to have you on to talk about Waverly Hills and what's going on there.
Okay. Well, I'm glad to do it. Waverly is a special place. It's an iconic location for all of us who are interested in the paranormal and has been for 20 some years. And what's going on up there is a real tragedy, really.
Yeah. So what is your relationship with Waverly Hills? How did you get started with them and become involved in this whole deal?
Well, I had grown up in this neighborhood, used to sneak into the building as a teenager. It was kind of a rite of passage back then. That was in the 80s when the building was closed and abandoned. And in those early days, it shut down in 1981. And in the early and mid 80s, I mean, it was like someone had just taken all of the people out of this big, massive building and left everything else behind. It was just fascinating. But over time, it got vandalized and the elements started taking their toll. And by 2001, when Charlie Mattingly bought it, I mean, it was overgrown with vines. There were actually trees growing inside the building. Parts, stairwells were just cluttered with debris. I mean, it was just a total mess.
Yeah.
And it was a place that no one had really heard of outside of the local community here. It certainly wasn't a paranormal hotspot or anything that anyone even suspected could be. But when Charlie bought it and started cleaning it up, he realized that there was activity going on in there that he couldn't explain. He wasn't a paranormal guy, didn't know anything about it really. And so he brought in some investigators. They took a look around. They were like, "Oh yeah, you got a lot of spirits here." So he was like, well, maybe this is a way that I can help fund my restoration of the building. I can get it cleaned up and make it safe for people to come in here and do tours. And he started doing that. And every penny he was raising through the tours, and then he started doing an annual haunted house. All that money was going back into the building. You could look at it and say, well, it doesn't look like you got very far. Well, the building is a building that was construction started in 1924, and it spent 20 years just rotting away to the elements. So restoring it is a massive, massive project. But Charlie was doing that over the years. Well, 2009, I went up there wanting to volunteer. I had gone up there during the cleanup process to help them clean it up back in 2001, and kind of got lost just wandering around in the halls and just fascinated with looking around the place. And Charlie had actually come up to me and told me, "That's not what you're here for. We're here to work. If you want to work, you're welcome. If you're just looking around, then come back when we're doing tours." So I kind of took that hint and I finished out for the day, and I didn't come back for a while. Then when I finally did come back in 2009, I started out as a haunted house actor because I just wanted to do whatever I could to be a part of things up there.
Right.
After the haunted house season was over with, Tina asked me if I would stay on and help with security and then help with investigations and tours, because she found out that I had been interested in the paranormal for a long time and had actually been involved with the paranormal since prior to then. And she thought I would be a good fit. So eventually I worked my way in to where I was one of the hosts for the private overnight investigations up there, and worked up there off and on from 2009 until 2019. And I quit. We had some differences of opinions about a few things, and I just I had another job anyway. I worked for the railroad, and I just kind of walked away from it. Well, last January, I got a call from the president of the Historical Society up there asking me if I'd be interested in coming back to help out with investigations again. And I had free time. At that point, I was self-employed, had all the free time I wanted, and thought, yeah, it'd be a great job. I'll do it. I love that place. And so I did. I brought my wife, Denise, and about 13 other people along with me when I came to help as volunteers and as other guides and overnight hosts. All of them experienced paranormal investigators. And that was something that Waverly hadn't seen, at least for a very, very long time, where all of your volunteers and guides were actually paranormal investigators themselves. We actually had the best year, I think, that Waverly's ever had as far as tours and investigations, not only with customers coming through the door, but with activity. I mean, the building was alive. I think a lot of it had to do with our approach, as paranormal investigators, compassionate, treating them as people, not as spooks. And things went really well. But I started questioning the board members up there about why Tina and Charlie were no longer there. And they gave me all kinds of excuses. They said things like they had stolen money and that they just wanted to spend more time with their grandkids. I mean, their story was all over the map, as far as why Tina and Charlie weren't there. Because I didn't just accept every excuse they gave, they started questioning me. They didn't like being questioned about it. It was odd. And eventually they tried to tell us how to host the investigations up there. Now, mind you, the people on the board up there are not paranormal investigators.
Right.
I don't even think they believe in the paranormal, to be honest. But here they were giving me a 5-page paper that I had to sign telling me how to conduct investigations there, which the first line in it was, first off, there's no right or wrong way to conduct a paranormal investigation, followed by 5 pages telling me how to conduct a paranormal investigation. And so I signed the paper and left that night. And then the next morning I called the guy who's now the executive director of the board up there. And I said, look, I got some issues with this. And I started explaining myself, and he wasn't really hearing it. And the conversation got a little heated. And finally I said, okay, I'm done. And I quit. Shortly after that, it was still in the back of my mind about what had happened with Tina and Charlie. So I decided to call Charlie and ask him what was really going on. And when I found out the truth about what had happened, how they had fired Tina was serving as executive director for the board up there. They fired her from that position when she was very, very sick. Tina and Charlie had lived there on the property in an apartment Charlie had built inside the building for them since, I want to say around 2013, something like that. 2000, maybe before then, 2009, 10. Anyway, they'd lived there for a long time. And when the board voted to fire Tina, they told them they had to leave, get off the property.
Wow.
And, it sounds crazy. They own the property.
Right.
The nonprofit that is called the Waverly Hills Historical Society, and it's also called a nonprofit, leases the building from Charlie to run the tours and investigations and other fundraisers up there. Charlie is basically the landlord. They told them they had to get off their own property and weren't allowed back. They filed a lawsuit against them, claiming damages for the repairs that Charlie had done to the building because they weren't historically accurate. This is there's 156 counts in the lawsuit.
Wow.
Or there were. And a lot of it goes back to not being historically accurate in how he restored the building. Well, it was his building. He wasn't accepting any government grant money, so he could do what he wanted with it,
Right.
But they see that the building is eligible for millions of dollars in government grant money, and they want that money. So they are claiming damages against Charlie to take the windows out that he put in and replace them with historically accurate windows. They claim that the parking lot is unsafely constructed. And just all kinds of things that they're claiming as damages against Charlie. And their resolution that they're seeking is for Charlie to just sign the building over to them. If he just signs the building over to them, they'll make the lawsuit go away.
Wow.
And Charlie bought that place for pennies on the dollar back in 2001. He basically got it for the back taxes owed on the building. A little bit more than that, but that's the basics of it. And Charlie and Tina are not rich people. They never were. Charlie worked as a machinist at the Ford Motor Company. He cashed out part of his retirement from Ford and bought that after he had some health issues himself. Every penny they were making was going back into the building, other than living expenses. And they were basically living off of Charlie's disability. That's everything that he had, for his grandkids, that's what he has worked the last 20 years for.
Right.
And they want him to just sign it over to them. These people who've never put the first drop of blood into the building, to save it and make it what it is today, they want it because they see that the building is capable of bringing in over $1 million a year, and they are eligible to pay themselves salaries as board members. And now they are, and they're paying some fat salaries up there for people that do basically a part-time job, just sitting on their tails and laughing at ghost hunters for walking around in the dark and paying them big money to do it. That's kind of where we're at right now. I mean, there's a whole lot more to Waverly, and we can talk about anything you want to about it, but that's the basics of the story.
Yeah, and I just want to say for anybody that doesn't know, everybody, if you're listening to this show, you probably know what Waverly Hills is, but it's in Louisville, Tennessee, and Charlie originally bought it. Louisville, Kentucky. I'm sorry, I'm in Tennessee. Yeah. It's in Louisville, Kentucky. Charlie originally bought it to save the building because a lot of the outbuildings had been torn down, and so, like you said, he never was into the paranormal or anything like that. That was something that came later, and then on ghost hunters and I think if I remember correctly, him saying that actually he was contacted by Fox, America's Most Haunted Places, or one of those shows, Scariest Places, and that's how they kind of got rolling with the TV stuff and more of the paranormal stuff.
Yeah, exactly. He had made a video of some of the things that were going on. Just him walking around and videotaping things like doors flying open and objects being moved and shadow figures, things like that. And he had that, it was just for his own records, He was like, look what I got.
Yeah.
And somehow word got out about it. And the Fox network actually contacted him and said, can you send us that video? So he did. And that began the climb of Waverly Hills into being at the top of most paranormal investigators' bucket list. But the number one watched paranormal TV show of all time, still to this day, is the first visit that TAPS made to Waverly Hills.
Yeah. And,
they caught a thermal footage of a figure running across the hallway that is still to this day, it's one of the most cool pieces of evidence I've ever seen caught by anybody. And, when you go back to it, really, Ghost Hunters, that TV show with TAPS, that is what brought paranormal investigation kind of out of the dark, right, and, made us all not look like such crazy people. It became more of a mainstream thing when that show became so popular. And, you can really trace it all back to that episode at Waverly Hills as the reason that, you have thousands of paranormal teams out there now and TV shows everywhere and podcasts and radio shows, everything associated with paranormal that has just exploded in the last 15 years or so. You could attribute a lot of that to Waverly Hills because that episode, like I say, is the most watched episode ever.
Right.
So Waverly is an important place for anyone that's interested in the paranormal, whether you've been there or not. It's something that we all, as paranormal enthusiasts or investigators or fans, whatever you want to call us, we all need to get behind doing what's right for Waverly Hills because it's part of the paranormal family. Not just Tina and Charlie, but the building itself and the spirits that are in it.
Yeah, and also that history of that building and all the people that died there and were there in the sanatorium, I mean, all that would be lost if it wasn't for Tina and Charlie.
Exactly. Yeah, that building would have long since either collapsed or been torn down and the property developed into something else, apartments or who knows what, if it hadn't been for Tina and Charlie.
And all the amazing history that they've dug up and preserved over the years that would have been lost.
Yes, exactly. And, people think of Waverly, the people who do know about Waverly, a lot of them have seen some of the documentaries or TV shows or whatever based on Waverly that talk about things like 63,000 people died here. Well, no, they didn't. Probably around 10 or 12, maybe even 20.
Yeah.
But not 63,000. That's a number someone pulled out of thin air. But during the tuberculosis epidemic, Waverly was the premier hospital in the world when it opened. And it was the place that healed more people than any other place during its time. A lot more people, walked off that hill cured of TB and going back to their families than were taken down the body chute. It's not this evil, dark place. It's a place with a lot of history it's important. There's a lot of people in this community here where I live, right here, 3 minutes from the gate at Waverly, that wouldn't be alive today if it weren't for the work that was done at Waverly Hills, because either them or their parents, grandparents, somebody down through time spent time at Waverly Hills with basically a death sentence and then, got over it and came home. And so it's a vital place. And the spirits that are there, like I said earlier, they're people. They went through a very tragic time in their lives where they were very sick and conditions were harsh. But Waverly itself was, they had nice food. They had beautiful rooms. The building itself was gorgeous. If you can ever find any historical pictures of the building from back when it was open, it was just amazing looking on the inside. And, this was around the time of the Great Depression where a lot of people didn't have much of anything. A lot of those people were living their best lives while they were at Waverly. So that's why I think a lot of them are still there. It was home to them.
Yeah. And like you said, there's still people too. And so to take away even what the spirits know as kind of their norm, the normal people coming in and that type of stuff, is kind of sad too. That somebody just come in and then also now you just have, hired help that comes in and just parrots whatever story they've been told without really knowing anything and having any experiences in the building themselves.
Exactly. I was told by someone who took a historical tour last week up there that they were told by the guide there's a lot of stories about what might have happened up here around room 502. One thing I want to tell you is don't believe what EVP evidence you might have heard. And I'm like, wait a minute, because, it's very personal to me because I've spent a lot of time investigating the story of room 502, met my wife through that investigation, and basically was put together by that spirit of that nurse who was found hanging outside of room 502. And to say, don't pay any attention to the EVP evidence that you might hear, that's like saying, ignore the spirits trying to tell you their own story to me.
Right.
I take a lot of offense to that kind of sentiment, but that's the kind of people that are up there now, that are giving the tours and making the decisions about what to do and all of those things. And it's just, for me, someone who loves the place and who loves paranormal investigation and has a strong connection to that building. It's disgusting, and it's something that we need to end. And that's why we started the Save Waverly Hills campaign to help Charlie in this fight.
Yeah. And it's just disheartening to see money come in and people act that way because of money. And, and especially it would be like somebody walking in here right now, kicking me out of my house and taking me away from doing my podcast and all the stuff that I do and saying, oh, sorry, we can make more money without you, Right. Yeah. It's just ridiculous.
And that's basically what's happening. They see an opportunity to put money in their pocket, and I'm trying to be really good here. Okay. There's
Right.
a lot I would like to say.
Right.
I will say this. They have no redeeming qualities outside of that building. That is what they've got going for them, that they work at Waverly Hills. Without Waverly, they are unknown. The people in the paranormal community, you could say the names of anyone up there in any paranormal crowd, and nobody's going to know who they are because they don't associate with the paranormal crowd. They are more closely related to the haunted house crowd and horror movie genre, which I can see there's some crossover to that, but they're not the same.
Right.
And those people don't get it. They don't understand the paranormal community. As a paranormal investigator, I'm going in there to find out what the spirits want to say. I'm not going in there to be scared or to see a demon or anything like that. I want to have a conversation, find out the stories of the people that were there. I want to hear about the history. I want to learn. I'm not there for a thrill. And that is what they are trying to turn Waverly Hills into, is a place. It may as well be a year-round haunted house. Now, we did a haunted house at Waverly, and it was our most successful and most important fundraiser every year that we did during the Halloween season. And a lot of people thought that was, I don't know, insensitive or, wrong to do. But a little backstory on Waverly Hills. They welcomed their first patients through the doors there October 20th of 1926. And the first event they had for patients and staff there was a 2-day Halloween party. And that tradition carried on the whole time that the building was open. So when we have the haunted house, we always kind of see that as carrying on that tradition that's now going on 100 years old. But it was broken this year because the people that run it don't want to do a haunted house anymore. And Waverly would not be there today if it weren't for the fact that Charlie was raising funds through that haunted house. Because, like I say, that was the most critical fundraiser they had every year. There's so many layers to this that are just, all of them are wrong. I mean, you were at the event Friday. You saw Tina and Charlie.
Yeah.
That's a simple couple. I mean, they're getting older now. They've had some health battles that Tina's still fighting. Charlie's got a pacemaker. They're just good people that are just good, simple Kentucky people. There's nothing evil in them. They are who they say they are. Charlie is the kind of guy that will look you in the eye and shake your hand, and when he tells you something, he means it. Tina will tell you exactly how you feel, whether you like it or not, or how she feels, whether you like it or not. But she's also got that infectious smile and sweet persona about her. And to see them being done like this, see them kicked out of their home and have everything they worked for so long taken from them is just wrong. And it makes me sick.
Yeah. And try to, and I'm sure that on the same breath, they're trying to erase the history of Charlie and Tina ever having anything to do with it, or at least downplaying, their role. Yeah. Because these people, to me, everything I've heard about them from multiple people, not just you, but multiple people, is that they're not only do they worry about the money, but they like the how do I say it? They seem like they like the limelight. They want to be the ones on Ghost Hunters and these other shows that come in there to film, and they want that recognition. Yeah. To whereas, when those shows come in, you always see Tina or Charlie on them, because exactly. It's been their place. And that's one of the first things that comes to mind, because I remember the effect that episode of Ghost Hunters had on me when they went to Waverly Hills is seeing Tina on there. She's one of the first things I remember, because she was fired up about not just the hauntings, but also the history of the place, and emphasized how important it is that, we preserve the history of these places. And so me as a teenager watching that, going into, early times of being a paranormal investigator and trying to learn what I'm doing, that kind of stuck with me to this day. I talk a lot on this show about the history of places and how important it is. And a lot of the events that I do, I don't make a dime off of. Everything goes to the places because it's important to save the history of these places. And like you were saying, Waverly Hills is kind of the godfather of the paranormal TV. And it kind of got a lot of people interested in investigating, and it deserves to be, back in the hands of the rightful owners.
Yeah, I agree completely. I couldn't have said it any better. Tina and Charlie, well, I've said it a couple times now, they lived there, and it was their home, and the spirits that were there were their family. When investigators would come in, you were treated like family. Tina would always come up, say hello, pose for pictures, talk, show you her own personal paranormal pictures that she had collected from there. You felt at home there. You were made to feel like part of the family at Waverly. What you've got up there now is a business, and that's all it is to them.
Right.
I mean, last year when I was there, they kept saying, that was one of their big mantras, we've got to get away from the mom and pop thing and run this like a business. And I'm sorry, but the mom and pop thing is what made Waverly Hills what it is.
Right.
They really don't have a clue. They really don't. It infuriates me. I mean, because you've got this special place that has, I mean, I've investigated all over the country with some of the most well-known people out there in the field, and there's no place that has that vibration that Waverly has. I mean, I've been to places where we had insane activity, plenty of them, crazy stuff. But Waverly is just a place that when you walk in there, I mean, you go back in time. I mean, you can picture that place. You know, you can picture the nurses walking up and down the hallway, wheeling patients around. You can picture the patients standing out on the solarium getting their fresh air treatments. You actually, I mean, you just feel like you're, you know, kind of transformed back to the 1920s, 30s, 40s, 50s, whatever. And not a lot of places have that kind of aura about them. And it's all because of what Tina and Charlie, how they treated the place and the residents, the permanent residents there.
Yeah.
And we can't lose that.
Yeah, I agree. And they need their home back.
Amen. You know, they have a home. They had another place that they were living in prior to Charlie finishing the apartment there at Waverly. And then when he got the apartment finished, they moved to Waverly and rented that place out for a while. And then water pipes froze up in it. It's an older home. Water pipes froze up and busted and it flooded. And so the house sat empty up until Tina and Charlie got kicked out of Waverly. And when they got kicked out of their home there on their own property, Charlie went in and got the other place fixed up enough that they could move in there. But they shouldn't have had to do that.
Right.
I mean, that place was their home.
So what can the listeners do to help the Save Waverly Hills cause, and where can they go to find more information?
Well, we have a Facebook page and group called Save Waverly Hills that we put updates on there constantly, any new events or anything like that we're doing, like the one you attended on Friday, which was awesome, if I do say so myself.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
And then we've got a website, www.savewaverlyhills.com, where we have merchandise. We have links to any events that we do. We have a GoFundMe account, and all of the funds that we're raising through these fundraisers, the events and the merchandise that we have, and this merchandise that we have, you won't find it anywhere but there. This is one of a kind stuff that Charlie designed himself and picked out himself for us to use on the website. And all those funds go to Charlie's legal defense. This is a legal battle that's been going on, 6 or 8 months at least, and it's very expensive. Waverly Hills, the people that are in charge up there right now, they have, the last time they filed taxes on $4 million in assets. So they've got a big treasure chest to pull from for their legal fees to try to steal this building from Charlie. Whereas Charlie is living on disability. And so he doesn't have that war chest at his disposal. So we're doing everything we can to try to put funds in his account, keep his lawyers working for him, and win this case. But we'll say all the momentum seems to be on our side right now. The other side has still not been able to produce 1 ounce of evidence to back up any of their claims. And we've got lots of things, lots of aces in the hole, so to speak, to pull out when this finally does go before a judge. So I think we're going to win. And once we do, they're going to be gone. Charlie and Tina will be making the decisions about who does what at Waverly Hills and who is never to set foot on that property again. And we're going to have a big party up there for the paranormal community when we win this.
Yeah, and I just want to explain to the audience of what kind of slime balls these people are. They are actually threatening to sue you and your wife, Denise, and some other people for slander.
Yeah, because we've told the truth about what they're doing.
Right.
I try to choose my words carefully on these podcasts and radio shows that I've been on, and even at the events when I'm talking. I mean, I loosen up a little bit more at the events because I think I'm among friends there. But there's so much I could say about them that I haven't said yet. If I wanted to say something that was slanderous, believe me, I've got ammunition.
Right.
But just stating the truth about them is something they can't handle. You can go to their Facebook page, their very own Facebook page, and you just mention the Mattingleys, they will block you, or they will lie to you and say they're retired. They won't tell you they were fired and kicked off their own property because they have a aversion to the truth. They just cannot handle the truth because the truth makes them look like the, as you said, scumbags that they are. who does that to an elderly couple who tries to take everything they've worked for and kick them out of their own home and tell them they can't come on their own property? No good person does that.
Right. And also with Tina having health issues and with Charlie having health issues, it seems like they waited for the opportune moment to kick them when they're down.
That's exactly what they did. And what they did, they separated anyone who would be an asset to Tina and Charlie. They tried to drive a wedge between Tina and Charlie and those people, myself included, and separated Tina and Charlie, kind of put Tina and Charlie on an island where they felt like they had no friends, and they thought they would just give in. When they presented this lawsuit, just sign the building over to us and we'll make it all go away. They thought Charlie would just give in because of everything else that he was going through and the fact that he felt alone. But when he realized that he had an army behind him, he came out swinging, and it's going in our favor right now.
Yeah. And that's awesome. And yeah, these people didn't count on the entire paranormal community backing them up because we all believe in what they're doing, what the Mattingleys are doing, not what these people are doing.
Exactly. And, everyone that we've been able to tell the story to, everyone that will take the time to listen has said to us, well, I won't be going back up there until Tina and Charlie are back in place. And, yet they're still selling out up there. I mean, Waverly has got fans worldwide, no matter what. And until everyone hears what's going on, they're still going to sell tickets.
Right.
So that's why these podcasts like this one are so important. And, it's to get the word out to new people who might not have heard before about what's going on. And for everyone that's listening now, tell all your friends, even if they're not into the paranormal, tell them about what's going on at Waverly Hills and let them know that, they just wait 6 months or so, it'll be back in the right hands, and it'd be an awesome place to visit. But for now, not so much.
Right. And I just want to say to the listeners, neither one of us are saying don't go to Waverly Hills. Do whatever you want. No. We're not saying boycott Waverly Hills. If that's what you want to do, then do it. We're choosing to do that because we don't believe in what they're doing. And I understand there's also two sides to every story. And before I even decided to have Ernie on today, I thought about this before I even met him a week ago. I thought a lot about this, and I've listened to a lot of different people talk about it before I decided to, use my small platform to help get it out there, because I think it's important. And I think that any way you look at it, the Mattingleys are being done wrong, and the people that are doing it don't have good intentions.
Right. No, they don't. They, like I say, they see a building that brings in over $1 million a year. If they win this lawsuit and wind up with that building, you couple that building and the property that it sits on with the 168 acres that they have in their possession, you've got a gold mine for a developer up there.
Right.
That they could easily just sell it to, and then no telling what happens with that building, because most developers would not see a use for that old building there. They would see more use for the property that it sits on if that building was gone. And I don't put it past this bunch. I mean, I'm not saying, I don't know that that's their intentions, but just given the fact that they are obviously money hungry, right, and don't care much about the paranormal or the history of the building, I can see them jumping on an offer to sell and cash out, and then Waverly goes away.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that, because that's a very real possibility. Like you're saying, if they are as motivated by money as they seem, then why wouldn't that be a possibility? And so then nobody could ever go back and enjoy, paranormal investigating or the history of the place or any of that.
Right. And, they put it out that they are a historical society that wants to put a museum up there and restore a portion of the building exactly the way it was. And all of these things, it sounds so great. I mean, that doesn't sound bad to anybody. I don't think anybody would complain about a museum and a portion of the building being restored to resemble what it did when it opened. But these people that are so concerned about the history put offices where the children's cafeteria was. And that, to me, was, I used to tell everybody on my tours, that was my favorite place to investigate. Outside of room 502, the children's cafeteria was my favorite place to investigate. They moved the gift shop into the auxiliary morgue, which is one of the most active parts of the building. Now, if you're concerned about historical accuracy, the children's cafeteria was not offices for the director of operations.
Right.
And the auxiliary morgue was not a gift shop. you know. So where's your historical accuracy there?
Right. And also, I mean, yeah, it sounds great. Okay, we can get these millions of dollars in government grants. And I can understand why, you know, Tina and Charlie never wanted any part of that, because there's lots of stipulations that come along with that too, of how they can spend the money, what they can do. And that's what you're talking about with the historical accuracy, is all of those government grants for the historical stuff. It has to go by the government basically comes in and tells you what you can and can't do. It's kind of like having a HOA in your neighborhood.
Exactly. Yeah, they tell you what colors you can paint the walls, what type of light fixtures you can put in,
right?
Everything. And that's why Charlie never took any of that money, never even applied for it, because he was trying to do things as economically as he could. You know, he didn't have this big bankroll of money to work with to restore the building. So he was bringing in what he could and putting that money into the building. He put windows in for like $280 a window. And those are large windows. They're one of they're unique size and everything. They don't make 1924 windows anymore, you know?
Yeah. And that's a lot of windows too.
Yeah. Well, the ones that the Historical Society has, you know, said that they have to put in order to get their government grants cost 10 times that. They're like $2,800 a window. Does that make sense? Because that building, a restoration on that building is going to cost probably $130 million to restore it completely. Now, there's no government grant that's going to cover that. There's no amount of tours and investigations that are going to cover that in our lifetime. It's not something that's going to happen anytime soon.
Right.
So, you know, I mean, the way that Charlie was going about it was the best way to ensure that the building stayed intact, I guess. You know, you had to get windows in to keep the weather out of it. You had to put a roof on it to keep the roof from leaking, because once the water gets down inside the walls and then it freezes and swells, then the walls bust, ceilings bust. You know, so those were the things he was doing, and he was doing them, you know, doing them right, doing them well, but not historically accurate. And that's where they had a problem with that, because they can't get government grant money based on that.
Right. Well, everybody, you can go to SaveWaverlyHills.com, check it out on Facebook as well, Save Waverly Hills. There's also a group like Ernie said. Y'all have T-shirts for sale that the money goes to the legal funds, and also people can donate on the website as well.
Yes. Yeah, we've got a GoFundMe link on the website, and we've got some really cool merchandise. I mean, we've got T-shirts, hoodies, stickers, tumblers, pens. We're adding new things all the time. Just go check it out, see what you can find on there. We've got events coming up. We just announced yesterday we've got a deal with a car club here locally that's going to do a car show up there on the property, the portion that Charlie does have access to. And a lot of fun events coming up, more investigations like the one that you were at Friday night. So just keep following what's going on and spread the word.
And if they want to find you, they can find you on Facebook under Packman Paranormal.
Packman Paranormal or Ernie Pack.
All right. Thank you so much, Ernie, for coming on today and chatting about Waverly Hills. I really appreciate it.
Anytime, man. I'd be glad to come back if you need me.
All right. Everybody, thank you for listening. Go check out those websites. Donate anything you can to this great cause. We will see you next time. Have a good day. Stay safe out there. Join us next time for a new episode of The Unseen Paranormal. Until then, head over to the Unseen Paranormal Lounge on Facebook for all the latest updates and discussions about the show. You can also find us on Instagram, Twitter, or at unseenparanormalpodcast.com. And please rate, review, share, and subscribe to help more people discover the show. The Unseen Paranormal Podcast is proud to be the ambassador for paranormal for Verbal.com. A big thank you to my friend Chris Lips for the awesome theme music. You can find more of his music on Apple, Amazon, or Spotify. And as always, thank you for listening.
You have come to the end of the line. Whoa. And I can feel you as you pass the other side. As if I even lied.